So welcome everybody to this Macklin's Take YouTube episode. Me, Andy Clark, and Matt Macklin. And today we are debating who is the best female fighter in the world currently. And now is the right time to do this because last weekend we saw Claressa Shields become undisputed in a second weight division. She'd already done it at middleweight and now she's done it at super welterweight. No fighter in the history of boxing has ever been undisputed in this four belt era or any of the multiple belt eras at two different weight categories. It's an astonishing achievement. Katie Taylor, of course, is undisputed at lightweight. And then we have a fight coming up this weekend between Jessica McCaskill, who is undisputed at welterweight, against Cecilia Brækhus, who owned that distinction herself for a long time before she unexpectedly lost to McCaskill. So there are plenty of personalities kind of in the blend here. You hear Shields often describe herself as the GWOAT, greatest woman of all time. I like that acronym. I'm not going to use it for this discussion just because female professional boxing did exist before the last 4 or 5 years. I think people have lost sight of that a bit. We had some amazing fighters back in the day, like Christy Martin, Lucia Riker, Anne Wolf, our own Jane Couch. So we don't want to do a Premier League with this and kind of pretend that like people don't think football existed before the Premier League. Women's professional boxing has been around for a good long time. It's just that they didn't really have the infrastructure that the fighters have got now with the recognition from the sanctioning bodies and TV and other things to the same extent that it exists now. So, you know, that's me being a little bit pedantic and anal, but I am pedantic and anal. So it shouldn't come as any great surprise. I'm going to go Team Shields on this one, Matt, because of what she's achieved in the ring. I'm true to form when it comes to analysing these things. I like to go on in-ring achievement, and she's become undisputed in 2 different weight categories, and that is an absolutely extraordinary achievement. But I'm guessing in this battle that you're going to be Team Taylor.
Yeah, I am Katie Taylor. Look, I think whatever way you look at it, it's definitely between these two. I think that's pretty much undisputable. Claressa Shields' achievements have been unbelievable. But, you know, so is Katie Taylor's. Yeah, she's not undisputed in 2 weights, but she stepped up. She's, you know, she's world champion in 2 weights. She was undisputed at lightweight. Even you go back to both amateur careers, they're both, you know, exceptional, achieved so much. I think, you know, I think for me, and maybe it's because I've covered a lot more Katie Taylor fights because I know her, so I'm subconsciously biased. That's possible. I'm not saying it isn't, but she's, you know, even we talk about Brækhus and McCaskill there, like Katie Taylor's even beaten McCaskill. You know what I mean? She just seems to me, again, and this, I haven't studied this in depth before this conversation, like, you know, with notes, but she seems to have boxed more big names, big fights. Maybe that's because she's down the lighter weights and there's more of them, you know, and there isn't so many big name fights there for Claressa Shields. You know, I'd love to see the Savannah Marshall fight for Claressa Shields. That's a fight down the line that I'd like to see. I'm not sure if it's going to happen anytime soon, but I think it's inevitable that they will cross paths. I think Savannah Marshall is going from strength to strength, but without a doubt, the bigger girls, you have to say Claressa Shields is definitely the number one. And like I say, I think it's definitely between her and Katie Taylor for who's the best. I know Katie Taylor got, you know, Ring Magazine Women's Fighter of the Year. She got Boxing Writers Association of America Fighter of the Year. You know, so yeah, look, I think Taylor's been very busy. She's been in bigger fights and fought other fighters that have also, you know, won titles and different things. I just think she's been that I lean to her, and like I say, that could be subconscious bias, but I do put Taylor number one.
It's just great that we've got the personalities and the characters as well to be able to really just fire this up and talk about it, because what I think is particularly good about these two is that they're so different in terms of their personality and their backgrounds and the way they go about things, that it means that for so many youngsters, there is something you can identify with in each one of them. Or McCaskill, she's got a great story. Important that somebody like her came through without the big Olympic background. Brækhus as well before her. They're all just great role models. In terms of Taylor versus Shields down the line, or Shields versus Taylor, I saw Dimitri Salita, Shields' promoter, yesterday, say that could happen. I don't want to be some kind of Scrooge here, but I don't think that should happen. I don't want to see it to happen. The reason being that Shields has talked about maybe being able to get down to 147. Maybe she can make 147, but I think she'll be severely depleted. Taylor would have to come up all the way to 147, and never in a million years is she that weight. So I personally, although people would lick their lips over this, I think it'd be bad for boxing, that fight.
I just don't think it's a fight that's going to happen ever. Like you say, I've stood by Clarissa Shields. I've seen her a few, I've been at many fights that she's been at, and obviously Katie Taylor know well. I mean, there's a massive difference in size there. It's just not. It's not going to happen. Do you know what I mean? I don't know that Clarissa Shields can get down that light. Maybe she can. Can she perform at it? That's another question. She's a big girl. I mean, I've seen her pro debut. It was on the Ward Kovalev. It was the first fight of the night, and I remember thinking, "Fucking hell!" She just come out throwing bombs from the first bell. You think it was like these two had a mad row in the casino, and it was just being carried on from the first bell. They just steamed at each other, throwing absolute bombs, and I was like, "Whoa!" It was brutal. That was a pro debut. She was just letting bombs go. She can fight. Obviously she. I have to say, 130. She went up to 135 from 130. I think that's right, isn't it? I've got that right. Yeah, she went from 130 to 135.
Who did? Sorry, I lost your sound for a second there.
So Katie Taylor went from 130 to 135, wasn't it? Or was it 135 to?
Well, she was. So obviously she was a lightweight as an amateur, so that's 132. If you do the conversion, then she boxed at lightweight. She had one at 140 pounds against Christina Linodatu.
Yeah,
that did show us, didn't it? That it's too much.
That's it. Sorry, I got mixed up there with the weights. Yeah, so she is a lightweight, and when she went up to fight Christina Linodatu, she boxed well. And she won the fight, but you could see the difference in the few pounds. Katie Taylor's, 135 pounds lightweight all day long, not 130. Sorry, that was getting mixed up with all the numbers. But she's a lightweight. She is a lightweight, and actually, I think for her to go even above lightweight, she gets a bit sluggish. She puts those few pounds on. It doesn't suit her. She doesn't carry the weight up well. It affects her speed, her movement. And she wasn't a sharp, I thought. I don't think she's the same fighter. It sounds mad. Some fighters can go through weights. I had this conversation on Twitter. There were a few of us not arguing, but debating. Tony Bell, you're on about Josh Taylor. Not everyone has to go through 5 weight divisions to become a legend. Marvin Hagler was a middleweight champion. Costa Sue stayed at welterweight. Both of those are absolute all-time greats. You don't have to go through 10 weights to be, you don't have to keep going up and down weight divisions to be a legend. And I think Katie Taylor's one of those girls at lightweight. She's perfect. She starts going up a few pounds, and it starts affecting her a little bit in a negative way. So, and listen, Clarissa Shields, it's all right saying you can make 147. Can she make it safely and perform at it? And I just don't see Katie Taylor going anyone. I don't think she could get up to. I think she'd have to have weights in her shorts to get up to that weight. I don't think she could actually make that weight. She's not that big of a girl.
No, I agree, and that's why I think that fight's a non-starter. But in terms of what Taylor could do next, I'm going to contradict myself slightly here, but I'll explain it. She may well end up fighting in the welterweight division, but as low in that division as she could possibly go, because before Breakus lost to McCaskill, that fight was in the works, and Breakus had made noises about, look, I could get down to 143, I could get down to 142. 141 might be where she would have had to have gone to get a fight with Taylor, because we know the power that Taylor's got at the negotiating table. And she'll be looking at that fight, McCaskill and Breakus, and Eddie Hearn will be, and Brian Peters. And it is an obvious thing for them to do. But they would need to get it at 141 pounds probably. For someone like McCaskill really is the same as Katie. She's really a lightweight who's managed to go up to super lightweight and to welterweight. But I do think that is something they'll look to do. So she could become undisputed welterweight champion, but without ever really being a welterweight.
Yeah, exactly. That look really that what's happening there is you've got two lightweights fighting each other at welterweight to win that belt. You know what I mean? To tick that box and win that title, and it's an achievement. But I don't like in terms of Katie weighing that. No, I don't see that. I think, like I say, she was up from 135 up to 140, and you can see that £5 a little bit sluggish, not sharp. So I don't see her ever fighting someone coming down to welterweight. I just don't see that happening.
No, nor do I. Nor do I. And I mean, I'd still love to see her fight Serrano. I think that's just such a brilliant fight, and it almost happened. It was going to happen in May, and then they tried to rearrange it for White Povetkin. That's where it was originally. They tried to rearrange it for the rearranged date, and it didn't quite happen, which was a shame. In terms of Shields, she doesn't have as many fighters around her. There aren't as many. The higher you go in female boxing, that's just how it is. The depth isn't as great as it is around the weights where Taylor is. And the obvious standout fight for her, whether she really likes it or not, is Savannah Marshall, because Savannah Marshall is the only person to have beaten her. She beat her as an amateur when Caressa was, I think, 17. Does that mean anything now? No, nothing at all. But it gives you a really good narrative, and it means that people want to see it. And when we saw Savannah last time, she stopped Hannah Rankin, which is something that Caressa Shields didn't do when they boxed a couple of years beforehand. So she doesn't seem mad keen on the fight. She says that she did receive an offer from Eddie Hearn, Caressa Shields, and that it was a low ball offer and nowhere near good enough. But if the money's right, that'll happen, won't it?
Yeah, it's a funny one though when someone beats somebody else in the amateurs, how they have the hawkeye of them over them psychologically. Riddick Bowe, I loved Riddick Bowe. I was a massive Riddick Bowe fan, more so than Lennox Lewis when he was around. But I'm looking back now, and you grow up, and I think now Bowe obviously didn't want to fight Lennox Lewis. He threw the belt in the bin. He stopped him in the Olympic final. Do you know what I mean? I think it was the Olympic final. He obviously had that psychological edge over him. Bowe didn't want to fight him. You know what I mean? Lewis fought them all, didn't he? Never vacated. He fought them all. So, maybe listen. Maybe it was a low ball offer. Maybe that was the reason. Maybe she doesn't really fancy Savannah Marshall. Maybe she's a better fighter, but maybe she just thinks she's my bogey woman. Do you know what I mean? I don't know. I didn't see the amateur fight, but it's funny how those things can stay with you. You know what I mean? And I think Savannah Marshall's going from strength to strength as well. I think she's starting to believe in herself more. You know what I mean? I thought her last performance against Hannah Rankin, she took her apart, really, didn't she? She just went through the levels, through the gears. She was brilliant.
She was, and it was good to see, because everybody's always said that the ability is there, but as you said, maybe the self-confidence wasn't. I think with Peter Fury, that's really come out, and it is a very buoyant scene, the British scene, with regard to the amount of fighters who have now got world titles, to Chantel Cameron as well, of course, and other fighters who are coming through, and it's the kind of scene around women's boxing now that will really encourage other people to take up the sport and try and emulate those characters we mentioned. And I do think it's a great mix. We had Caressa Shields on the podcast with Hannah Rankin a while back now, and that was the only one you've missed, because I think you were sort of a bit fluey that day, and it was in a gym, so you couldn't really. You just couldn't do it. But she was over here, Caressa, giving her quote camp and coaching youngsters, and I just think she's great, for the same reason that I think Katie Taylor's great. As I said, they're really, really different, different ethnicities, different backgrounds, culturally different. Everything about them is completely different. And that's brilliant, because when you've got two people at opposite ends of a spectrum, like I said before, anyone in between them can kind of find something from one of those two, as I said, or McCaskill, that they can kind of cling to. So, it's in a really good place, isn't it? Female boxing at the minute. I mean, maybe during the course of this, the odd person might have been muttering under their breath about how becoming undisputed in 2 weight divisions in female boxing wouldn't, there's not as much depth as men's boxing and all of that, and it's not as good. And if you've been doing that, if you succumb to that temptation, then you just need to think about things a little bit differently, because the way we've always done it is, me and you, when we're commentating on fights, is it doesn't matter who's fighting. You judge it and you analyze it and you treat it absolutely equally. But when it comes to discussing the wider scenes, men's and women's sport are different. There's no real merit in comparing the two, is there?
Exactly.
They're separate.
It's like if me and you were commentating on a Southern area title, and it's an absolute barn burner. Our volumes are going to go up and down like you wouldn't believe it. We're going to be excited and we're going to be engrossed in the fight. And when we're commentating, the person watching it, they're going to be like, "Wow, what a fight!" Because we're living it, because we are excited. It's a barn burner. It's a great fight. Are we saying they're going to become world champions in the next 6 months? Of course we're not. They may never ever get past Southern area title. That doesn't mean it wasn't a great fight. You know what I mean? And it's the same with Clarissa Shields, Katie Taylor women's boxing. It's like, let me tell you, Katie Taylor against Delphine Pursoon in the last 30 seconds of the final round in Madison Square Garden was as epic a 30 seconds you're going to see in boxing. And atmosphere-wise, every single person in the garden that night were on their feet. Both girls just knocked 10 barrels of you-know-what out of each other. They hammered each other. It was brutal. It was skillful at times as well. I mean, how could you not get completely sucked in and live in every punch with them? You had to be. It was unbelievable stuff. But, was it the same as De La Hoya, Shane Mosley at the Staples Center when there was, no. But, you got women's sport is catching up. Give it a chance. You know what I mean? It's really the last, you mentioned Christy Martin, Jane Couch. Those girls didn't get the same media attention. They probably get the same funding. They didn't get the same anything. It was harder. They pioneered it through. And they, pioneer's the wrong word, but they pushed it. And now it's getting to a place where it's getting the recognition. And there's probably more young girls boxing now, and more young girls playing football now. I seen something on the television the other night about one of the, or maybe it was a clip on social media. I can't remember where I've seen it, but it was one of the sports, a footballer saying, when we were young, we didn't have women on the telly to look up to and say, I want to be like her, because it wasn't on the telly. So, but young lads, young boys have got young men to look up to and say, oh, I want to be like Grealish, or I want to be like whoever, you know what I mean? So now that women's sport is on the television, young girls can look up to the women that are playing. Like young girls can look up to Katie Taylor and Clarissa Shields and think, wow, I want to be like them when I'm older. Do you know what I mean? They've got role models now that are getting media attention that they can aspire to be like. And you're 100% right. And it's not just the ability of Katie Taylor and Clarissa Shields. They are polar opposites in terms of personalities and characters. And that's great. That's great, because it gives us the polar ends. And then there's, McCaskill, there's everything in between, just like in the men's sport. We need character. But the reason why boxing's always had the best, you think of how many films have been made about boxing that have won Oscars, because it's the life stories, it's the characters. It's like no other. And you have to let Katie Taylor's personality develop and come across. And you have to let Clarissa Shields' personality develop and come across unique to her. They're both completely different, and that's great. We want different characters.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, my point really was that people just, if it's all possible, just resist the temptation to feel the need all the time to compare men against women. They're never going to box each other, and that's absolutely right. So there's just limited value in comparing the two. In other sports where men and women have been competing in the same arenas on the same stage for a lot longer, people don't really do it. Nobody says, "Oh, Serena Williams was great, but Roger Federer would have beaten her." Nobody bothers with that, because it's completely pointless. It just is, but people do it sometimes. So the Macklin's take crowd are an enlightened crowd. So I'm not trying to patronize anybody here, but I'm just saying, it's just, if you ever go down that road, you just need to think about it slightly differently. It's just, there's just no point in that. Anyway, we'll leave that one there. That went on a bit longer than I thought, but it's just a really good talking point. And yeah, I do want to see Shields fight Savannah Marshall. And I think I do want to see Katie Taylor fight the winner of that McCaskill Breakers fight. I think they would have to get it right down at the bottom end of the welterweight division, but that or Serrano. We'll see.
I want to remember, Andy, you see it with people all the time where, I don't know, for example, I'm trying to think of an example. Well, like, I'm not even going to compare it, but you know, we've got Katie Taylor here, who is an absolute legend of a sports person. You know, and you got Clarissa Shields, who's an absolute legend of a sports person. Instead of knocking them and comparing them, and just enjoy them. Do you know what I mean? Because when they're gone, you'll be sorry. You'll wish they were back. So you know, enjoy them. Enjoy them now. Enjoy their different personalities, their different characters, and their fighting styles, and just enjoy watching them fight.
Yeah, that's it. Never a truer phrase has ever been uttered than the one that states you can only beat the opposition that's in front of you, and that's it. You know, you can only do what you can do, and that's why I'm never a fan really of comparing fighters from different eras, or when people say, oh, but Klitschko didn't have great opposition and all the rest of it. You just think, well, what was he supposed to do about that? You know, he can't create humans. He can't, you know, he's a clever man, but he can't do that in some lab in the Ukraine somewhere. You know, anyway, we're getting into all sorts of different. I'm doing a Macklin here. I'm doing a Macklin. So we'll leave it there. But we will be back soon. In the meantime, everybody, have a good week.